What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking our top 24 player rankings and tiers for the 2024 fantasy football season. So sit back, relax, enjoy. If you do, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear it in the comments section. Do you agree, disagree? Who's too high? Who's too low? Along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, let's get into it. And as you can see, we've got our ranks and our tiers pulled up here via fantasypros. This is as of early July, and it is based on full PPR scoring. But that's all you need to know, so let's kick it off. And coming in number one, to probably nobody's surprise, at the top of the tier one list, it is Christian McCaffrey. Now, one thing I do want to say here before getting into McCaffrey's breakdown is when I say tier one guys, I basically mean the surest things in all of fantasy football. I basically have no question marks about these guys. They are all RB1s or wide receiver ones, and they should be the faces of fantasy football. And probably this is how your drafts should be playing out, more or less in this order. So again, coming in number one, we've got Christian McCaffrey, running back of the 49ers. And I think he proved last year the importance of having a great running back, hopefully bringing back some love to the running back position. You guys know I am particular to running backs. I still view a really good running back as a little bit more important than a really good wide receiver. And McCaffrey is the king of the running back position. He's on a great offense where he's the focal point. He's the best pass-catching running back in all of football. That's why he's at the top of the list in full PPR. And when he's healthy, nobody can touch him. That's why he is pretty much the first overall pick in all drafts every single time. So enough of that. We all know about McCaffrey. Let's move on to number two, because this is where it gets interesting. I've got Breece Hall of the New York Jets. And if you want to split hairs between Hall and the next guy on our list, aka Bijan Robinson, then fine. I barely have Hall ahead of Bijan. But the reason I do is I think Breece Hall, what he was able to do last year without Aaron Rodgers, shows you he's going to be, again, the focal point of this team. He has the entire skill set that you want. Aaron Rodgers returning this year is, I think, going to be a much-needed addition to this offense. And he is ahead of his recovery compared to, Kirk Cousins, who happens to be the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. And I think Breece Hall, sure, maybe some of that pass catching might go down because Rodgers is going to do a better job of distributing the football, but the rushing yards and the rushing touchdowns should go up, improved offensive line. So I like all those things there. And then to Bijan Robinson, pretty much everything I said about Breece Hall, you can copy and paste with Bijan. I think that last year, through no fault of his own, he was in a bad situation where the usage with the other running backs didn't make a lot of sense. Blame Arthur Smith for that. He's gone, thank God. You've also got a quarterback upgrade, which should help things. Kirk Cousins, if he's not available for the start of the year, Penix is there. It's still a better option than Ritter, but I do think Cousins will play the majority of the year. Some people might have Bijan as their number two. He was hyped up, and it was said that he's going to be used like Christian McCaffrey. I think that's probably more off-season talk than anything else, but either way, he's still going to be a huge focal point. And I think is the best or second best overall player on that Atlanta offense. Then we get to our first wide receiver here at number 4. I've got CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys. Proved last year that he can be an alpha, he can be the dude. And the reason I have him number 1 is primarily because of the quarterback play. I think that Dak is a little bit more reliable than Tua or a Joe Burrow or some other guys. A little bit more consistent. And then I look at the competition with CeeDee Lamb. Like, you've got Brandon Cooks, and then afterwards, not much else. I mean, you had Brandon Cooks last year, and Lamb was still dominating. He's the focal point of this offense. I think he's going to be just a little bit more consistent than number 5 guy on our list, Tyreek Hill of the Miami Dolphins. Now, don't get me wrong, Tyreek Hill is the best home run hitter at the wide receiver position in all of fantasy, which, if that's why you want to make him your top overall wide receiver, I get it. I just think there's going to be times where Jalen Waddle, being fully healthy, is going to have something to say about that. And then also Tua. We see good Tua, we see bad Tua. I just need to see a consistent Tua. And I do have some question marks about that. Then we go to Jamar Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals at number 6. And as long as you have a healthy Joe Burrow for the entirety of the year, Chase should be one of the dominant forces in all of football. He can do it all. He's used in every which way. Huge red zone guy as well. And, best wide receiver there, especially with T. Higgins, the disappearing acts he has from time to time. Chase is going to be the focal point. No more Tyler Boyd. So even more focus on Jamar Chase. Then we go to Garrett Wilson at number 7. I really like Wilson. I think he is finally going to have his breakout season. I mean, it didn't happen last year. He was disappointing, but through no fault of his own, like Aaron Rodgers going down the first series of that game in week 1, nobody could have planned for that. So now with him returning, all the talk is that he is the number 1 dude for Aaron Rodgers. And I do think Rodgers is going to be healthy to start the year. And this offense is going to look completely different with him running the ship. I think he's got another really good 1 or 2 years left in him. So Garrett Wilson should finally break out. Then at number 8, Amon-Ra St. Brown. He has been super consistent in Detroit ever since joining the league. And he is the top pass catcher on this offense. Whether Jameson Williams develops or not this year, Amon-Ra won't have any issues and is still going to see his, that was still the fact last year with Laporta breaking out, with Jahmyr Gibbs doing what he did. And then Jared Goff, it's his favorite target. I feel really good about Amon-Ra St. Brown continuing his dominance. Now we get to our tier 2 list, and with tier 2, these are still end of the first round, second round guys, but some more question marks start to creep in. So at number 9, we've got Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings. On talent alone, he's probably the best wide receiver in all of fantasy football, in all of football, period. But Kirk Cousins is no longer there, and that's a big deal. Because however you felt about Kirk Cousins, he was a really good fantasy football quarterback. He'd air it out, and he could get the ball to Justin Jefferson. He was good enough to do that. But now it's probably going to be the Sam Darnold show for 2024. And Darnold, he's not in that same category. Sure, he can air it out. He can do those things, but I don't know if the connection is going to be there. I don't know, obviously, if the accuracy and all those parts of being a quarterback are going to be there like Kirk Cousins. I don't think they will be. So for that reason, Justin Jefferson does take a tumble down my wide receiver rankings, but again, not too much. Number 10, I've got Puka Nacua of the LA Rams. I mean, look, he's coming off setting the rookie wide receiver record. So I get why people are so high on him. For what it's worth, I do think the separation between him and Cooper Kupp will be smaller than some anticipate. But given his age, given his performance, injury history compared to Cooper Kupp, he probably will be the number 1 option for the LA Rams. Showed that he could be trusted by Matthew Stafford last year. Stafford loves him. So I do think that he does belong in that still upper echelon of wide receivers. Then at number 11, I've got A.J. Brown, another guy where I think he is a little bit better in terms of standard scoring because he can be a little bit up and down with the receptions. You've got Devonta Smith there as well. But on the positive side, he is the number 1 guy for Philly. Huge touchdown upside as well. Jalen Hurts, really good quarterback, top quarterback option. So he can get him the football. I just think there's a little bit more inconsistency with A.J. Brown than some of the other guys than I would like. Then at number 12, I've got Saquon Barkley, another Philadelphia Eagle, new home, moving on from the Giants. And sure, you're going to have vultures from Jalen Hurts in terms of rushing yards and touchdowns, but guess what? You had that with Daniel Jones. On the flip side, though, Barkley is joining a team that's much better, with a much better quarterback, better offensive line, so those things will play in his favor. And I have him as the next best available running back because I think his combination of rushing yards and pass catching ability put him a little bit ahead of these other names. And speaking of other names, at number 13, I've got Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. Wouldn't be shocked if he overperforms this ranking, but what it's going to take is, kind of him really usurping David Montgomery. And I just don't think that's fully going to happen unless there's an injury to Montgomery, like the few times that we saw last year. Then okay, Jahmyr Gibbs then probably belongs in the tier 1 conversation. But, this is kind of a joint backfield. Now, why Gibbs is higher, obviously, is because of his pass catching abilities. Probably the second or third best pass catcher on this team. What we need him to do in order to take the next step and be elite is, be the top guy in the red zone opportunities and just separate himself from Montgomery, who I think is still a really good value in drafts. Then at number 14, I've got Jonathan Taylor of the Indianapolis Colts. And Jonathan Taylor last year with contract stuff, with injuries, he did not deliver. But this year, fully healthy, I think he is going to return to his old ways. Similar situation to Saquon Barkley. You've got Anthony Richardson there, who's going to be a rush-first quarterback. He's going to take away the yards. He's going to take away the touchdowns. But I think Taylor can still get it done. Good offensive line. I just don't think he's quite as good of a pass catcher as Barkley. That's why he's a little bit lower. Now we get to our tier 3 list. And honestly, I think with the tier 3s here, there's a much bigger gap between tier 2 and tier 3 than people might admit. Like, if I could skip from tier 2 straight to like tier 4, that's probably how I would do this. Now, sure, there's some breakouts here, but there's a lot of question marks. At 15, I've got Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. This has everything to do with the quarterback upgrade in Kirk Cousins. I said it before, I do think he will play the majority of the year. And if not, you've got a good break glass in case of emergency with Penix. London proved to be the number 1 wide receiver last year. Now there's going to be a lot more consistency. And I look at the other wide receivers. Nobody really scares me. Like Mooney isn't going to usurp him. So I really like Drake London. I think he can be a breakout. Then number 16, we've got Chris Olave. I really like Olave. I think the talent is there. What worries me is I just don't think he can be that dominant wide receiver every single week. And the reason I say that, I kind of look at his stature, I look at his build. I think where he is going to excel is if he just becomes a target hog. Michael Thomas is no longer there. We need Derek Carr to be a little bit more consistent. But Olave has the makings of being that next great PPR wide receiver. That's why I do have him ranked this highly. Number 17, I've got Kyren Williams of the LA Rams. And I'll be honest with you, Kyren is one of these running backs that I have a very hard time pinpointing. Is he ranked too high, too low? He's coming off an amazing year, but the Rams did invest some higher draft capital in Blake Corum, one of the top 3 running backs in this rookie class. But I still think Kyren Williams will be the guy. Like Blake Corum, his opportunity will come if there's an injury. Williams, I think, is still the trusted name. Good offensive line, good offense in general. There will be scoring opportunities. So I still do tend to lean on Kyren Williams coming closer to duplicating his success from last year. Then at number 18, the biggest boomer bust name maybe on this entire list, that is Davante Adams of the Raiders. He's getting up there in age. He's on a team with the Raiders where quarterback situation is hard to trust. For the love of God, I hope Gardner Minshew wins out that quarterback situation. And hopefully Davante Adams returns to being the number 1 guy, and we don't see like Jacoby Myers outscoring him for multiple weeks. The age is concerning. Again, the team is concerning, but I still think he potentially has one last year of being a low-end wide receiver 1 for fantasy football, as much as that hurts me. We knew that the arrow would start pointing down ever since he left Aaron Rodgers. The question is like how much, and we've kind of seen how much. Next, we've got Michael Pittman of the Indianapolis Colts. He broke out last season. Yes, there's a lot of names for the Colts, like a Josh Downs, like an Adonai Mitchell, but I think by far and away Pittman is the most complete wide receiver they have. I think he's going to be the number 1 guy. For Anthony Richardson, I do think he will take a slight step back compared to what he was able to do with Gardner Minshew, but he did just get paid. He's going to be an integral part of that offense. And, when I look at the other wide receivers kind of in this range, I think consistency-wise, he is going to be ahead of them, which to me is really valuable. Then number 20, I've got Travis Etienne of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Etienne was a top 5 running back last year in PPR scoring. I know there's some sexier names. I know there's some more exciting names. But I do think that Etienne can still come close to duplicating that. He's in a good offense. He's a good pass catcher as well. Those are the things you look for a high upside PPR running back. He proved the success last year. And I think he's going to, warrant, again, a late second-round selection. The number 21, I've got Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints. I'm higher on him than most. I think, again, he's one of the better pass-catching running backs. He is going to be one of the focal points on this team. It just matters, okay, can we stop having Taysom Hill vulture him with touchdowns? I still think he's going to be the top overall running back for the Saints, even though they've got some other names. And as long as, the pass catching ability is there and he's targeted in that area, he should be a really, really good value. Like we saw what he did last year when he returned from his suspension. On a per game basis, he was really good. It's like he started struggling when the Saints got away from him in terms of just feeding him those short passes, and then when Carr started having some issues. Then at number 22, I've got Rachaad White of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If this was non-PPR, he would be lower. I do have some question marks here. Can Baker Mayfield duplicate the success he had last season? And will Rachaad White continue to be used as much as he was as a pass catcher? If those two things are yes, then he will have similar success to what he did in 2023, and he can be a top 10 running back in PPR formats, decent offensive line, and I do think after Mike Evans, one of the integral parts of this team. Now we get to our tier 4s, and tier 4s, we get to some other less sexy positions. We get to some crowded rooms, whether it's running backs, wide receivers. And here I start with Nico Collins of the Houston Texans. He got paid. He comes off a huge year. He's got a great quarterback in C.J. Stroud, but he plays alongside Tank Dell. You added Stephon Diggs. Schultz is still there. Joe Mixon was added. So a lot of weapons, a lot of mouths to feed. We'll see. I think he's still the preferred option, and I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up outproducing this ranking. And he comes in like closer to that number 15 spot, like where Drake London is. But I also wouldn't be shocked if he kind of disappoints compared to last year, because you do have Diggs, you do have Tank Dell, and CJ Stroud won't just focus in on one guy. So for that reason, I do think Nico Collins, through no fault of his own, is in a really good real life NFL situation. But fantasy-wise, that could lead to some issues. And then finally, the last name on our list coming in at number 24, I will give some love to the tight ends. Sam Laporta, my number 1 tight end right now. He is in a high-octane offense. He did great things in his rookie season. I touted him last year as a great flyer at the end of drafts. He delivered. I think he can do the same this year. He's the number 2 pass-catching option after Amon-Ra. Jameson Williams hasn't panned out. Jahmyr Gibbs, he's a little bit of a special case since he's a running back, but Laporta high touchdown upside as well. And he kind of rounds out our list here. He is the, tight end 1, can be the number 1 guy at his position. And also a position where if you get a difference maker, you get a real nice advantage. I think that probably the end of the second round, third round is where you're going to see Sam Laporta being drafted. But with that, we conclude our top 24 breakdown of rankings and tiers for the 2024 fantasy football season. If you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us there. Let us hear in the comment section, agree, disagree, along with any other questions you guys might have. We'll do our best to answer them all. But with that being said, we'll see you guys in future videos.